Good morning and welcome to round one of the fifth annual convening of The Pitch, a competition of new ideas. I'm Kate Kuzminski, Deputy Director of Studies and Director of the Military Veterans and Society Program here at CNAS, and I'll be your host today. Co-hosting with me is Will Harwood, Director of Communications at CNAS. Welcome, Will. So, Will, tell us, what are you most looking forward to from our contestants today?
Well, thank you so much, Kate. It's great to be here. I'm excited. I know that we've got an incredible collection of submissions. A lot of thought has gone into these, and really the opportunity to see some dynamic new ideas about how to move the most important topics with national security forward. It's a great thing that CNAS makes such a big investment in the next generation of leaders. And I think having the ability to look at and review and judge these great ideas coming in from younger next generation leaders is a great way for us to carry that forward. So Kate, perhaps you can tell us what we'll be seeing more of today.
Yeah, thank you, Will. The Pitch is the Center's premier event to elevate emerging and diverse voices in national security. Today, you'll hear pitches from 12 contestants who are divided into 3 different heats. Heat 1 is entitled Military Modernization. Contestants in this heat will be answering the question, what new ideas, strategies, or reforms could the U.S. Department of Defense implement to better meet the challenges of the future? Heat 2 is entitled Institutions and People Power. Contestants in the second heat will be answering the question, what specific reform to critical U.S. national security institutions, including structures, processes, and human capital, can improve their effectiveness and public confidence in the face of new challenges? And Heat 3 is entitled Technology and National Security. Contestants in this heat will answer the question, what new ideas in U.S. national security policy can address growing national security challenges for the United States and strengthen the safety and prosperity of the American people? So, Will, why don't you tell us how our audience can participate today?
Thanks so much, Kate. There are a lot of ways our audience can participate in today's event. First, we'll have a chat box open during the entire event, and there you can give your reactions about pitches and show support for the contestants. In the chat, we'll also be doing a series of polls throughout the event that our audience can vote in. To join the chat and participate in the polls, go to cnas.org/live. Again, that's cnas.org/live and log in under the video. You can also engage with us on X using the hashtag CNAS2024. And now, Kate, I'll turn it over to you. Perhaps you can share a bit more with us about the process that we'll be using today as we go through the judging.
Yes, and again, we really want our audience to stay really engaged in the conversation. So a bit about the process. Each contestant will have 2.5 minutes to present their pitch. After all the contestants have presented their pitches, our expert judges will ask each contestant one question about their pitch, and the contestant will have 1 minute to answer. At the end of the heat, the judges will rank the contestants. Contestants will be judged on 4 criteria areas: ingenuity and creativity of their idea, practicality of their idea, academic rigor and clarity, persuasiveness, and delivery. Rankings will not be announced until after all the heats have been completed. After the final heat, our judges will submit their rankings. While the judges are doing that, you will be asked to vote for your favorite in the People's Choice poll. The poll will open at around 12:05 p.m. and stay open for 10 minutes. The 3 heat winners and the People's Choice Award winner will advance to the second round, which will be held during the 2024 CNAS annual conference in June. They'll compete for the Best in Show award. Will, can you share with us what awards our winners will win from today's competition?
Absolutely. The winners from each heat will be featured on the CNAS website. They'll also get a chance to contribute to a CNAS published commentary and featuring their pitch. And the heat winners will also receive a $250 honorarium. At the grand finale in June, the winner of the Best in Show will also be able to participate in the Sean Brimley Next Generation National Security's Dinner of their choice and receive a $1,000 honorarium.
Yeah, this promising prizes. So thank you, Will. So now we want to turn it over to our panel of expert judges. We are privileged to be joined today by a number of researchers at CNAS, as well as last year's grand finale winner. So first up, let's bring on Andrew Metrick, who's a fellow in the CNAS Defense Program. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Will. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to see what all of our contestants have to present to us today.
So
Sorry.
Andrew, what are you hoping to see in the pitches that you see today?
So I'm really hoping to see a great blend of creativity along with practicality. It's that balance that I think makes a great policy recommendation, something that is going to excite people, but also able to move the needle and be put into practice quite readily.
Yeah, that's excellent advice and something that we try to follow here in our own research. Next, we'd love to bring up Bill Drexel, who's a fellow in the CNAS Technology and National Security Program. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So thinking of, you manage a team, what makes for a successful pitch and what advice would you give to our contestants today?
I mean, if they've made it to this far, that we know that they've already got great ideas. So if they're confident in those ideas and they present them clearly, I think the merit of their ideas will shine through. So I'd say the best advice is just to be yourself, believe in your idea, and be bold in proposing something that may not be obvious to the national security community presently.
That's right. And one of the most enjoyable things about the pitch every year is just how much fresh energy is brought in by our contestants. Third, let's bring on Kate Johnston, who's an associate fellow in the CNAS Transatlantic Security Program. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Will.
So, Kate, as a researcher, you're always crafting complex policy arguments. What are some of the things that you're looking for as our contestants back up and support their pitches?
I think a bit like Bill said, we're looking for something kind of clear and concise where you can really see the thread of the argument. So looking for contestants who can talk through the logical steps. So even for complex ideas, which is often what we're communicating, actually those can be communicated clearly and simply, and we can follow the logic of the argument.
Wonderful. And finally, we have with us Anna Blue, a graduate student at Princeton University and the winner of the 2023 Pitches Best in Show Award last year. Anna, welcome back.
Thanks, Kate. I'm so glad to be here.
So we've given a lot of advice to our contestants, but you sat in the hot seat last year and you won it all. What's your advice about making the most of the experience for our contestants today?
Yeah, definitely. I think what's most important is taking the feedback, whether it be through questions or from other contestants, and implementing it in your idea later on. And I think the questions often from the judges can suggest a lot of places that you can improve upon your pitch and make it a more solid idea.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to all of our judges. I'm now privileged to turn it over to Anna Saito Carson, who is the Senior Vice President of Development here at CNAS, one of our 3 executives, and a real model of a mentor for many on our staff and outside of the CNAS team. So Anna, welcome. We welcome you to provide a few brief remarks before we get into the first heat.
Thanks so much, Kate and Will. It's really awesome to be here today. The pitch, as you all know, is an annual competition to elevate new voices in national security and provide an opportunity to present innovative ideas in a national security meets Shark Tank event. Each contestant has been selected from a pool of applicants by CNAS staff. This year's cycle was extremely competitive, and we want to congratulate the 12 contestants who made it on to our first round. We also want to thank everyone who took the time to apply this year. The Pitch annual event was created with the intent to help elevate emerging and diverse voices in national security. The event is part of our larger Next Generation portfolio here at CNAS that focuses on advancing and highlighting the next generation of national security experts. educating, and uplifting the next generation is one of the core missions of CNAS, and we are proud to keep in line with this effort by putting together events like the pitch competition annually. The awards mentioned earlier give winners a unique opportunity to engage with the work that we do here day to day at CNAS and network with our national security community. I look forward to hearing this year's pitches and the innovative ways young professionals are looking to engage in the national security debate. With that, I want to wish everyone the best of luck, and back over to Kate to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Anna. And again, it's a real privilege to have a member of our executive team providing support to this really vital effort that we have underway. So thank you so much for that. I know I personally have only succeeded in my career because other folks have invested in opportunities like the ones that we have here with the pitch and the guidance of mentors. Will, I'll bring you back on. What are some of the things that you've learned from mentors in your past or opportunities that were provided to you?
It's a great question, Kate. I think mentorship is so important to be able to really work and work closely with people who have been successful and can model and direct you in terms of not just the functional work of the specific area that you're interested in, but also just good professional skills, the importance of being on time, of making sure that you can take the appropriate time to balance all the things in your life that are important. And I think having those people that can take you under their wing and demonstrate in their example a way to really build a successful career is so instrumental to all of us. So it is so great to see that at CNAS and the big focus and effort that we're giving to that.
Yeah, agreed. I think having those models ahead of us and also people looking to provide opportunities is huge. So we hope that the pitch today and some of the next generation programming that we'll highlight later in today's program provide those avenues and opportunities. So with that, we're going to kick off with Heat 1. I'm going to mention, and I'll reiterate during the course of today's events, that our contestants are speaking in their own personal capacity, and any views that they express during the program are those of the contestants alone, and they do not reflect that of their employer or of CNAS. So with that, let's bring up Heat 1. First, and a reminder that Heat 1 is focused on military modernization. So first up, we have Julian Graham. His pitch is create a multilateral shipbuilding coalition.
Great. Good morning, and thank you so much for the opportunity to present. The primary geostrategic challenge facing the United States in the 21st century is China's reemergence as a maritime power for the first time since the Ming Dynasty. Central to the goals of containing China, defending our allies in the Pacific, and protecting Mare Liberum is the growth and maintenance of a modern and effective naval fighting force. In this arena, we are falling behind. China has in some measures surpassed us in naval strength, and the problem is growing worse. Our grand strategy should be oriented towards the Indo-Pacific, and the US Navy is the most important hard power cog in that grand strategy. China has over 200 times the shipbuilding capacity we do, and by 2040 will have grown its navy to over 440 ships, while ours will have stagnated at around 290. We have also fallen behind in commercial shipbuilding, where China is able to build more ships than the rest of the world combined. We are entering a spiral of decay as our shipyards spend more time repairing existing vessels than building new ones, leading to a negative replacement rate that erodes our technological edge and military readiness. The solution is to embrace multilateralism. The president should issue a waiver to Section 8679 of the US Code that prohibits the construction of armed vessels in foreign shipyards. This way, we can leverage the shipbuilding capacity and technological investments of allied countries to accelerate construction and repair while we reinvest in our own shipyards. This would deepen ties between allied countries militarily and economically, creating jobs and raising wages at shipyards across allied nations and here in the US, demonstrating that multilateralism works for the middle class. This approach has been hinted at by Secretary Del Toro, who has spoken of the efficiency of shipyards in South Korea and Japan. AUKUS provides a model for this, where the UK will build American submarines for the Australian Navy. But we can go beyond that, for example, in icebreaker-class vessels. The time it will take to reinvest in our own shipyards is not enough to meet the demands of the moment. We need to embrace the strengths of our allies to buttress our own navy to ensure the security of all. In the 5th century BCE, Athens formed the Delian League for this exact purpose. Today, we must build a multilateral shipbuilding coalition fit for the 21st century and ensure that the United States remains the preeminent naval power in the world. Thank you for considering my submission to the pitch.
Thank you, Julian. A note for our upcoming contestants that we'll also do a quick tech check with Will before we jump in, just to make sure that everything is working and in good order. So our second contestant is Tyler Koteski. His pitch is, don't bring one magazine to a missile fight, VLS rearmament at sea. And we'll bring up Will to do a quick tech check.
Thank you, Kate. Tyler, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Tyler? I think that there may be a mute. You may be on mute at the moment. Can you hear us? So I think we need to just go through. I don't know if that's on our end, or if Tyler, there's a mute that's enabled on your computer, but we can't hear you. Kate, why don't we move on to, while that's working through, we'll move on to our contestant number 3.
That sounds great.
Circle back to Tyler.
All right, let's bring up Jenny Oberholzer. Her pitch is, a priest, a minister, and a rabbi walk into a brigade, rethinking the role of chaplains in the American military. Jenny, let's pull you up and see if we can do a tech check.
And
all
Jenny,
right, can you all hear me?
Yes, Jenny, we can hear you, we can see you, and your time starts now.
Fantastic. All right, chaplains are great, but we're using them wrong. I don't have a lot of time, so I need y'all to take it on faith. Military chaplaincy represents some of the best America has to offer. There's a problem, though. Chaplains aren't just religious providers, thanks, Kat. Because they have true court-tested confidentiality, they're a mean stopgap right now for a lack of behavioral and mental health care within the military. And the confidentiality issue is huge. JAGs will sometimes tell service members to go talk to a chaplain first before they come back to talk to the JAG, because the chap's going to have a level of confidentiality that the JAG simply won't. Military medical doctors won't either. Some chaplains are really well prepared for these kinds of conversations. They come in with counseling experience. They know when they can help. They know when to refer someone. And other chaplains just don't have that kind of knowledge. Which one you get is luck of the draw. Service members come to chaplains when they need to talk about something big, something personal. One chaplain might help you figure out next steps related to your divorce, substance abuse, and unwanted pregnancy. Another chaplain may tell you that your experience or feelings are wrong, biblically wrong. Now, correlation and causation, two very different things, but one Army study from just a few years ago found out that people who sought out a chaplain were much more likely to die from suicide than people who only sought out a secular counselor. This isn't to denigrate chaplains. A good chaplain's worth their weight in gold. They save lives. They improve relationships, and they strengthen the entire military community. They remind our people that they're human beings, not human doings. But other chaplains, they just can't serve every service member who comes their way. We can't train our way out of it. Chaplains are commissioned by the military, but they're commissioned by the military because they come with an MDiv or an equivalent degree. A couple of years of
Okay, it looks like we may have just lost Jenny. I'm not sure if there's what that was. Do we want to go ahead and try to go back to Tyler and begin as we work through that and restart?
Yep, that sounds great. And this is just life with Zoom these days, isn't it? Jenny, great job. And we will pull back up Tyler and see if we can get our tech check fixed there. So Tyler, we'll send it over to Will for a tech check.
Great. Let's try this again. Tyler,
okay, is my audio coming through?
It's perfect. We can hear you loud and clear. Your time starts now, Tyler.
Well, thanks, judges, and apologies for the inconvenience. Sailors fighting far from home need the confidence that they'll have the ammunition they need when they need it. But right now, we can't give it to them. And that's because the US Navy can't reload its main missile magazine, the vertical launch system, at sea. This is a glaring, under-discussed power projection weakness, and it leaves us at a disadvantage against our most formidable adversary. In any conflict with China, the ocean would be a key battleground and salvos of guided missiles would be pivotal weapons. And we'd use lots. According to the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments, the Navy's surface fleet could expend up to 360 VLS missile cells per day in a high-intensity fight in the Pacific. And in these conditions, our ships will rapidly empty their magazines. And here's where it gets rough. American ships can only reload their VLS magazines in a few properly equipped friendly ports. Rearming under these conditions means leaving the fight for weeks or more right when these ships are needed most. And that's no way to deter a great power competitor. Fortunately, there are promising solutions, and they largely involve adapting existing concepts for moving cargo between ships through pulleys and robotic cranes. But the Navy needs to really step on the gas here. So instead of annual experiments, it should be conducting quarterly tests until at-sea VLS reloading can be practiced in training exercises. The potential return on investment here is astounding. The CSBA estimated that at-sea VLS reloads could add the equivalent strength of up to 18 destroyers or cruisers, or put another way, up to $37 billion in additional value. So that's a larger sum in perspective than the Navy's entire 2025 shipbuilding budget request. So in comparison, previous budget requests for developing these different concepts potentially useful for VLS reloading have ranged in the tens of millions annually. So you could think about increasing these amounts even tenfold and still come in orders of magnitude lower than the potential value on the table for US power projection. So in summary, at-sea VLS reloading would be a game changer for US naval strength, really on par with mid-air refueling for aviation. And it's time we thought of it that way and prioritized rearming at sea accordingly. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tyler. We're going to return to Jenny to let her finish out her speech. So let's see if we can get Jenny back up on the screen.
Okay, how about now?
Okay, great. You're with us.
All right. Can y'all remember where I cut off?
I think why don't we let's, because it was interrupted, why don't we have you start from the beginning, and Jenny, your time can start now.
All right, thanks. All right, I'll take it again. Chaplains are great. We've been using them wrong. And I've already told you why it is that I think they matter. But the thing is, they're not just religious providers. Because they have this true court-tested confidentiality to a degree that even JAGs don't have, people will frequently go and see them first before they talk to a JAG, before they talk to a medical doctor. We've been using them as a stopgap against the lack of behavioral and mental health treatment available within the military. And some chaplains are ready for this kind of conversation. They come in with counseling experience. They know when they can help. They know when to refer someone out. But other chaplains just don't have that kind of knowledge. Which one you get is the luck of the draw. You don't get to choose who's available on your ship, on your base. Service members come to chaplains when they need to talk about something big, something personal, a divorce, substance abuse, unwanted pregnancy, struggling with issues of gender identity or sexuality. And one chaplain may help you figure out what the next steps are for you. The other chaplain may tell you that what you're going through is wrong, biblically wrong. I'll pray for you. Correlation and causation, those are two very different things, but there has been an Army study that shows that people who talk to chaplains are slightly more likely to die from suicide than people who don't. People who talk to a secular counselor only. We can't train our way out of it. There's no way to baseline because chaplains, they're commissioned by the military, but they come in at the sufferance from an ecclesiastical endorser. To sign on with that ecclesiastical endorser, you have to hit all of their requirements and agree with their doctrine. So that includes all religious stances. If you don't do that, you lose your endorsement. If you lose your endorsement, you lose your commission. A good chaplain's worth their weight in gold. They save lives, they improve relationships, they strengthen the whole community. Other chaplains just can't serve every service member who come their way. We need to stop leaning on them as counselors when we cannot guarantee that every service member is going to get the same level of care. We need to stop asking our chaplains to serve as the stopgap, actually invest in proper counseling for our people, and make that counseling feel more accessible by making it more confidential. We can trust our chaplains to do what they do best and still ensure that we meet the needs of every service member. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny, and thanks for adapting and overcoming. Tis the way. Okay, so we are on to our final pitch contestant for Heat 1, Alec Stewart. So Alec, his pitch is a mobilization strategy to deter near-peer adversaries, a voluntary gap year program to bolster the individual ready reserve. Will, I'll turn it over to you for the comms check.
Thank you, Kate. Alec, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me? Good morning.
We can hear you, we can see you, and your time starts now.
Recent war games by CNAS and other think tanks concluded that a conflict involving China and the US over Taiwan would result in a tremendous loss of life and disrupt the global economy. However, war with a near-peer adversary is not inevitable. With an effective deterrence strategy, the US can protect its national security and avoid the catastrophic scenario mentioned earlier. A key pillar of this deterrence strategy is bolstering the individual ready reserve's ability to mobilize for prolonged conflict via a voluntary gap year program. Recent high school graduates can enlist into active duty for 1 year. Recruits would complete basic and specialty courses, followed by participation in a major training exercise of an active duty unit. Next, participants would transition to the individual ready reserve, where they would receive GI Bill benefits to support them in their civilian careers. This program will improve military readiness in several ways. At the individual level, it will provide recruits the skills needed to be combat effective. At the unit level, it will ensure the active duty is capable of integrating new soldiers quickly. At the branch level, it will exercise the bureaucracy needed to mobilize soldiers at scale. At the strategic level, it will give the president options, such as proactively calling members of the individual ready reserve to active duty to signal resolve and deter adversaries. This program will have a powerful deterrence effect. Adversaries will not only have to contend with a U.S. military capable of winning the first battle, but also able to mobilize soldiers to win successive battles and secure victory. This will establish a competitive advantage over autocratic regimes that tend to rely on poorly trained conscripts, as demonstrated by Russia and Ukraine with disastrous results. All of this will dissuade adversaries from challenging U.S. interests due to our increased military readiness. The volunteer gap year program can be implemented now using the existing training infrastructure and training pipelines. Recruits would automatically qualify for the GI Bill due to their year of active duty status. Additionally, the U.S. military missed its recruiting goals in 2023, leaving approximately $5.6 billion for positions that were never filled. If we leverage these funds, we'd be able to train over 30,000 soldiers. We still have time to implement an effective deterrence strategy and prevent a possible conflict with a near-peer adversary. This program will ensure trained soldiers are at the ready, enhancing our military's ability to mobilize for prolonged conflict and thus deter adversaries from threatening our national security. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Alec. So we are about to bring back our expert judges. Each judge will ask one question of one contestant. First, we'll bring back Andrew Metrick, who will pose his question to Julian.
Thanks, Kate, and thanks, Julian, for an engaging pitch. My question is pretty simple. You've laid out this argument for a multilateral shipbuilding coalition, but shipbuilding is a national asset that's viewed jealously by many governments. What's in it for foreign governments to basically make yard space, it's often quite limited, available to build U.S. vessels?
Thank you very much for the question. And I think it goes to the heart of the issue. And I referenced the Delian League as a sort of ancient example, but there are other examples throughout history of this. And I think in the 21st century, my contention would be that China is a country that is posing a maritime threat to other countries' naval security, their shipping industry, their fishing industry, commercial shipping, and the agreement essentially of trading shipbuilding capacity for defense protection, I think would be implied. If you're building a US ship in, let's say, a shipyard in the Philippines or in Indonesia, there's an implied component that that ship will definitely be used to protect that country's national security. So I think in terms of what's in it for other countries, they're being bound to the US through economic ties, and they're getting that assurance of defense by the United States and our commitment.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Bill, we'll bring you back up on the screen to pose your question to Tyler.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Tyler, for a really great presentation. I think you've made a great case, a really promising case strategically and budgetarily. It seems like a clear win, but I'm left wondering, what do you think the biggest challenge is to getting this done, and why is it not already being done now?
It's a great question. It's interesting. I think it's really just the low level of prioritization that this program has had. So there have been on and off tests basically once a year, every other year or so, going back to I believe about 2017, and it's really just kind of go from prototype to prototype, and they'll test it, at peer side and not really in realistic conditions. And ultimately, a lot of these designs, kind of the concepts have existed for a while, but now we have the engineering technology to make them a lot more viable. And just given the multiplier that it could be, I think we really just need to throw resources at the problem, given how kind of efficient overall the return on investment could be. So it just really needs to become the priority that the value add it would represent would be.
All right, thank you so much, Tyler. Next, we'll bring back Kate to pose her question to Jenny.
Thanks very much, Kate, and thanks to Jenny for a really interesting presentation. I think there's a lot of merit to thinking about having secular counselors within the military. And my question is kind of what is the pipeline for bringing those people into the military? Is there already a challenge in recruiting secular counselors? And how would you propose to resolve that?
So I would argue there's already an issue with recruitment overall. There's a lack of mental health available within the United States as a whole. The other big factor for the military is actually a slightly different problem, which is the issue of confidentiality. When you talk to a chaplain, you don't have to worry about that conversation going elsewhere. When you talk to a chaplain, that's completely confidential. If the chaplain betrays that, they might very well lose their commission. I think historically they always have done, or they just generally resign, they fall on their sword. It's understood that if a chaplain betrays that confidentiality, they've ruined things for every chaplain serving. A secular counselor doesn't currently have that level of confidentiality, and I think that's the thing we need to think about and talk about rather than the pipeline. The pipeline is a huge issue, yes, no question. But it's the legal status of the chaplain where they have that ability to keep it quiet. That's what matters.
Thank you for that, Jenny. This is, as someone who focuses on military personnel policy, a really fascinating topic. Lastly, we'll bring back Anna, who will pose her question to Alec.
Hi, Alec, thank you so much for your presentation. I really love that you zeroed in on recruitment issues because I think this is becoming an increasing problem for the military. And I think we need to start thinking creatively about how to solve it. So my question for you is, how do you intend to keep these new ready reserve members committed and prepared for long-term service if they're only undergoing a one-year training program?
Thank you, Anna. That's a great question. So there's a couple of ways to handle that. First is with this particular program, we can have mustering requirements every so often years where soldiers would have to report and perform an ACFT or perform actual training just to demonstrate that they are ready. What we do know is that other countries such as Australia have implemented a voluntary gap year program themselves. Have seen success, with the training of their soldiers and their readiness, and actually have seen approximately 25% conversion rate from people who join the program to those that actually end up going active duty. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so thank you again to all of our contestants for Heat 1. We are going to send our judges back to do their voting and submit their rankings. While our judges are submitting their rankings and we're preparing for our next category, institutions and people power, it'd be great to engage here with the audience. So we're going to warm up with our first poll, which will also give you an ability to practice with the ways to engage. Since our next heat is focused on human capital, why don't we start by getting to know a little bit more about who's in our audience today. So we'll pose a poll up here. Which category describes your current employment best? Are you working in government? Are you active duty in the military? Are you coming to us from academia? Are you a student or a grad student? or are you coming to us from somewhere else? If you picked that other category, we encourage you to contribute to the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. I'd be remiss not to provide an opportunity. We have a communications professional here with us and my co-host, Will. And so I'd love to get some advice from you about not only how our contestants can make for a compelling pitch, but also our audience members. What makes for a captivating speaking engagement in your professional experience and opinion?
Well, it's a great question, Kate, and we heard some great pitches just now. I think that, the most important thing when considering a speaking engagement is to think about the format. But a general piece of advice, something that I would never shy away from, is to consider using a story, a personal story that you can tie back and connect back to the topic of your speech. People love stories. We remember them. It's something oftentimes that we will create a narrative of our life and of our history through. So I think the best piece of advice that I can give for a compelling speaking engagement would be consider to weave one into your speech. To give that to the audience, that would be a great way to make the speech memorable and to deliver your topic with impact.
Yeah, no, I think that is really compelling. And then, thinking about where our pitch contestants go from here, the winners will be able to publish a short piece here with CNAS. So you've given us some good advice about what makes for a compelling speaking engagement, but what's some additional guidance that you would give to our contestants or our audience members about what makes for a successful short written piece like an op-ed?
Right, and for this, I would say with any writing, but also with speaking, but with writing, really take care to think carefully about your audience. Where are they when they're going to be encountering your writing? Put yourself in their shoes. And I think a good general tip for writing is to really make sure that you can elevate your key message, so bring it to the top, and you can keep your message as concise and short and simple as possible. So I think in the foreign policy space where there's a lot of complexity, I think a good rule of thumb is the adage to be short, but not shallow.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. A reminder to our audience that you can see the poll there in the chat box at cnas.org/live. And back to Will's points, thinking about your audience is really important. Something that we spend a lot of time here at CNAS thinking about is who is the appropriate audience. Sometimes we're writing for a general audience. Other times we're writing for very specific people within the Department of Defense or members of Congress. And sometimes we're thinking about how do we bring a new audience to an existing challenge and problem. So, all right, do we have our poll results from the audience to see where folks are from? I'm really interested to see how many students we have engaged. I know we've got a lot of young professionals in the audience, and we appreciate you all taking the time to cheer on our contestants. Looks like we might not quite have our poll results yet, and a reminder to go to cnas.org/events. It looks like we are at 9% military, 9% academic, and a whole bunch of you are, 9% government, 9% military, 9% academic, and a whole bunch of you are coming to us from other parts of the sector, thinking about how to break into this national security community. So we appreciate having you there in the audience. It looks like our second heat is ready to go. As they're coming in, we will prepare for our next session, which is focused on institutions and people power. This is an area that I spend a lot of my time in, both on the human capital side and on the process side. So, from our crew, do we have everyone backstage? All right, looks like we are ready to kick off. So thank you again to our contestants for Heat 2. Again, I will remind our audience that every contestant is speaking in their personal capacity and not in the capacity of their employer or of CNAS. So without further ado, we'll bring up our next contestant, Matthew Gallagher, and we'll let Will kick off our tech check.
Great. Matt, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Great. We can hear you. We can see you. Your time starts now.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to share my idea for bringing voices from the development context directly to USAID. Specifically, I'm proposing a new program to bring international students to American universities, train them in STEM disciplines, and then employ them for at least 20 years to work on projects in the country of their origin. Initially, I propose the agency select cohorts of 50 people for each of its mission countries, but this can be adjusted as needed. In exchange for committing to a career with the agency, program participants would first receive partial tuition scholarships and then EB-2 visas on a pathway to citizenship. This idea is important because there is no substitute for lived experience. From congressional appropriations through project implementation, our development policies have a bias for outsourcing work to large organizations or US-based contractors. Though there are understandable reasons for why these relationships exist, they nonetheless undermine the basic purpose of development, to empower the right people from the communities we're trying to support. I believe my proposal refocuses our efforts towards this basic purpose. And I bring this idea to you today because I believe it is actionable. Though this program would be new and I think could be transformative, it is certainly not without precedent. The agency already has a highly successful Wrangell Fellowship, which uses the same basic model of education for service. Additionally, the agency has a program for Bosnia and Herzegovina called Diaspora Invest, which seeks to engage folks who have immigrated and to foster collaboration for economic benefit of their home country. So the idea is to build upon structures and principles that are already working well within the agency. Now I'll close with this. Immigration is America's comparative advantage. Welcoming immigrants is something we can do at a larger scale, at higher efficiency, and to greater effect than any other country in the world. That matters, especially for a period of competition between liberalism and authoritarianism, a period of skepticism about US global leadership, and a period of fragilities turning into conflicts. The best way to address these challenges is to lean into our strengths, into what we do well. And that's what my pitch is ultimately about. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. And it's great to see the development perspective also represented in our conversations about national security. Moving on to our next contestant, we have another Matthew Howeiler. And Matthew's pitch is establish a ROTC for hackers. I'll turn it over to Will for our tech check.
Great, Matthew. We can see you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Your time starts now.
Just last week at Vanderbilt, FBI Director Christopher Wray said that Chinese hackers are developing the ability to wreak physical havoc on our critical infrastructure at a time of its choosing. Cybersecurity is pivotal to U.S. defense right now. Unfortunately, I can say from my personal experience as a STEM graduate student at UC Berkeley and MIT, serving our country is not even on the radar of most top U.S. tech talent. They do not feel like they're a good fit for the traditional military culture. ROTC has a reputation for focusing on physical fitness, not completely unfounded as a 2022 UConn study showed. And computer science majors are not exactly known for their confidence and ability to do pull-ups. We need to build a new pipeline of young cybersecurity talent with the brand and culture that appeals to people in STEM. Existing ROTC programs have tried to prioritize STEM, but as a 2023 RAND study of JROTC showed, even for those that do join, the STEM outcomes are mixed. By creating a hacking program modeled on ROTC, we can train cohorts of coding and systems leaders who are committed to serving our country. They can even compete to join an elite hacking team, a nerdy counterpart to the Navy SEALs, with the reputation and prestige to inspire future young people. This program is a win for participants as they receive the financial resources to pursue a college major in an impactful field. For the Department of Defense, the upfront costs of education and training are more than offset by not having to compete with Silicon Valley salaries for top tech talent. And additionally, our cybersecurity systems will be further strengthened by this influx of young talent. Following service, many participants may transition to private tech companies to the benefit of both those companies and the Department of Defense. This synergistic effect will encourage influential tech companies to support and partner with this program, further bolstering the reputation of this program. Cybersecurity is critical to the US national defense, and we need to build a college pipeline that appeals to STEM talent. Done right, young people will grow up aspiring to join the US elite defense hackers. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Matthew. Next up, we have Jenny Lee. Her pitch is investing in Chinese Americans for U.S. national security. Will, you want to kick us off with our tech check?
Absolutely, thank you, Kate. Jenny, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Great. We can hear you and see you. Your time starts now.
The first time I was invited to a high-level meeting during a college internship at the State Department, I noticed I was the only Chinese American in the room. I thought it was odd that we were discussing the Indo-Pacific without other Asian Americans. The 2022 National Defense Strategy named China as the top challenge to U.S. national security. But there is a noticeable absence of Chinese Americans in government problems to address U.S.-China relations. In fact, Asians make up 7% of the nation's population, but only 6% of the federal workforce. I believe the US government needs a better cultural understanding of China, and to address this issue, we need to invest in Chinese Americans. If not, we risk misunderstanding how the Chinese government thinks and acts, which could lead to not only war, but significant consequences for our global economy. So, what does investing in Chinese Americans look like? First, the US should harness existing Chinese American talent within government. By identifying and prioritizing these individuals for China roles and actively managing their career paths, we can optimize our already limited resources. The US realized a decade into the war in Afghanistan that we needed experts who spoke the local language and then developed a program to address that gap. Second, the US needs to actively encourage Chinese Americans to join the government, particularly places like CIA's China Mission Center and State Department's China House. This will allow us to unlock the full potential of our workforce. Just as the State Department has lifted restrictions barring employees from serving in countries where they have close ties, we must create avenues for Chinese Americans to serve where their expertise is most needed. On the other side, China is actively investing in understanding the US. Nearly 300,000 Chinese students are studying in US schools right now, compared to only 700 American students at Chinese universities. One might argue that there is an enormous effort going into building AI to help us understand our adversaries, but the reality is that cultural understanding and the ability to decipher nuances is where human beings add value. We need humans that understand China's cultural nuances to have a greater strategic understanding of China. To conclude, China isn't going anywhere. Investing in a core of analysts and policymakers with a deep cultural understanding of China will give us diversity in thought, and I firmly believe in bringing more Chinese American voices, historically underrepresented in government, to tables of power, which will strengthen our position when negotiating in the Indo-Pacific.
All right, thank you, Jenny. And last, our fourth contestant in this heat is June Ray. June's pitch is the necessity of strategic grain reserve in the age of climate change and food weaponization. We'll turn it over to Will for a tech check.
Okay, June, we can see you clearly. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. We can hear you. Your time starts now.
Thank you. By 2050, climate change is expected to reduce the global grain production level by 23%, causing a plethora of negative economic impacts worldwide. This will push farmers further into poverty. This will increase the cost of living. And this will also limit the availability of these food supplies, especially in countries that rely on foreign import. On top of this, conflicts between major grain export nations, such as Russia and Ukraine, or China and the US, will likely exacerbate these effects even more. This is a perfect storm brewing for even more destabilization, more mass migration, and of course, a potential increase in conflicts. On top of this, we must also consider the possibility that our potential adversaries, such as Russia and China, will tap into their own reserves to expand their diplomatic influence, to provide these materials to countries in need in exchange for a very favorable outcome. This kind of resource weaponization is already being seen with Russia and their policy surrounding natural gas. I therefore propose that the United States creates its own strategic grain reserve and position them in US military bases around the world. This will have two major benefits. One, it will be able to provide these food supplies to countries facing humanitarian crisis in a quick and efficient manner. This is going to be a lot faster by utilizing US military's vast global logistic network, as well as its experience in providing humanitarian aid, compared to what we do at the moment with the US aid, which takes months to deliver food to those in need. On top of this, this will also provide us with our own reserve to first ensure the market that we will have enough supplies so that it will not increase or create a price shock of these essential grains. And on top of this, it will also limit our adversaries' ability to weaponize their own reserves and increase their influence around the world by using those reserves. By creating our own reserves, we will be able to secure our own interests, our allies' interests, protect our economy, and of course, protect our own food security as well as those of our allies around the world. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, June. I think it's fascinating that we're hearing a range of pitches in this category that think about things beyond what we might necessarily think about as national security topics. And it's really fascinating to hear all of your pitches. So I'd like to bring back our expert judges to pose their questions one at a time to our contestants. First up, we'll bring back Andrew Metrick, who will pose his question to Matthew G.
Great. Thanks, Kate. So my question here is really focused on the funding for such an effort. It's a really interesting and engaging idea, but how much do you think this is going to cost, and how is that going to affect U.S. aid going forward? Because you're basically proposing a large number of people injected into U.S. aid on an annual basis. So how do you imagine that working from a cost and people perspective?
Thank you for that question. It's an important one. First, I'd want to point out that the idea in the long run is to make USAID more effective in its mission. So that can be a cost-saving initiative in a general sense. In the short term, I don't know if it's necessarily about spending more money overall, but reprioritizing where we appropriate and allocate funds for USAID. So currently, the appropriations process is a split between operations and implementation, with the latter receiving much more funding. This is a big reason why we have what gets called the aid industrial complex, the system of contractor organizations that we outsource to. So I would say investing more money in agency operation would be offset by spending less money on awarding these external contracts.
All right. Next up, we'll bring back Bill, who will pose his question to Matthew H.
Thank you, Kate. And thank you, Matthew, again, for a really great presentation. I love the idea. Anything we can do to get more cyber expertise into our national security environment, I'm all for. So I think it's a great initiative. My question is, yes, it does seem like it would be helpful to have a kind of purpose-built pipeline for the kind of unique cyber culture that we need to develop. But then you might have the opposite problem that if these kind of groups of cyber warriors, as it were, enter into the national security force and the Defense Department from a completely separate pipeline, how do you envision that kind of distinct culture melding effectively with those who have gone through more traditional training and socialization kind of processes? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question of how do you, like you said, meld those two different cultures into one cohesive unit working together so you don't start having conflict between those two groups that you had going through different pipelines. I guess I would say I would view this program as a way to take people that are far outside that pipeline, that are in Silicon Valley or in a totally different sphere, and start to transition them towards the culture that you would have in defense. Because right now, if you want to hire someone from Silicon Valley, I think it's going to be even more of a culture shock than if you had kind of a happy medium. So as part of this program, I would incorporate leadership training and different training and other things that are more military based. So people that are in this unique ecosystem will be learning more about the military ecosystem and the defense ecosystem. So hopefully they would at least be closer to the people that are in the defense culture than just someone that you would take from a STEM background and try and pull in as a contractor. And there will always be challenges of culture as you try and mix these groups, but I think if you incorporate it as part of the training and help to meld the groups together, I think it would also be fun to do some collaborative activities where they work together on different challenges as part of their training. And in that way, they start to understand what the needs of the people they're working with are and build out those connections early on in the program. And I think in that way, you could start to bridge those gaps that you might have in the culture.
All right. Thank you, Matthew H. Now we'll bring back Kate to pose her question to Jenny.
Thanks very much, Kate. And thanks, Jenny, for what was a really interesting idea. I can really see the value of having the expertise of Chinese Americans working on China issues. I wanted to ask you kind of what your understanding or what some of the challenges are that put Chinese Americans off from working for the government. And are there specific things that the government could do to make those roles more enticing to Chinese Americans?
Thank you so much for that question. I think my understanding, especially as a lived Chinese American working for the government, is that often you find other Chinese Americans who really do want to work for the government, but they fear that they might not receive a security clearance. And as opposed for your second question, I think a specific role that the government can play is that we can so the government has created avenues where the talent is most needed. And I think the most salient example I can think of is with regards to cybersecurity. So the government a few years ago identified that there was a big hiring gap in IT and cybersecurity talent and created a direct hiring authority to sort of fix this gap. And I think a great way for the government to sort of make it more enticing for Chinese Americans to work in government is to have a parallel authority for bringing on Chinese Americans. And in that way, we can also make our government positions more competitive, particularly with the private sector.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny. And I'm going to take this opportunity too to point our audience to some research that CNAS produced last summer, looking at the future of civilians and national security and thinking very specifically about this, how we capitalize on the entire breadth of the American workforce to meet national security requirements. Next up, lastly, we'll bring back Anna to pose her question to June.
Thanks, Kate. June, thanks so much for your presentation. Food security is an issue that's near and dear to my heart, so I appreciate you bringing light to it. I would love to ask about the previous attempts by the U.S. government to establish a national grain reserve. We've tried it in the past, so I'm wondering why you think it will be different this time. What will be successful about it?
Yeah, I think we have a couple of countries already stockpiling a massive reserve. As I mentioned, China, for instance, is currently stockpiling around 50% of the world's reserve in wheat, rice, and I believe corn, as well as around 30% from what I understand of soybean. So I believe that that particular case provides basically a proof that this idea could work. My particular idea would work, I think, much better because we are dividing this reserve up in several installations and military bases around the world. So it won't provide this kind of massive cost of creating a one concentrated reserve. I think by distributing them and reducing the size of the grain reserves to these military installations, it will provide an easier way to maintain and create these reserves and silos.
All right. Thank you, June. And thank you to all of our contestants in Heat 2. We're going to take a little break from our contestants right now. Will's going to take a look at the comments that we're receiving from our audience. And as he's taking a look at that, a reminder to our audience that the next heat is entitled Technology and National Security. Again, a reminder to our audience that you can submit your questions in the chat at cnas.org/live. And given what the contestants pitched just now, what are some of the things that you think are the most pressing issues regarding human capital and processes in the national security sector. What's missing from the conversation? We want to hear from you. Given the discussion that we're having on human capital, I'd like to turn a question over to the other Kate, our Judge Kate Johnston, who has great experience as a civil servant in the British government, to talk about effective communication in a government setting. So Kate, what do you find makes for an effective pitch to senior decision makers, especially those who might be short on time?
Thanks, Kate. That's a really great question. And I feel like I've spent lots of my time trying to get senior decision makers to focus on an issue. And I think the key thing is being really, really short and clear. So stating the problem up front, making sure that you've worked through all of the different options, and then presenting a recommendation to those seniors. Ideally, my experience is if you can get it on one piece of paper, even better. And if you can manage to pitch it to a senior decision maker in kind of a few minutes, again, really, really good to get them focused on the idea and have a recommendation that they can kind of latch on to. So I think the experience of our contestants today in conveying their idea in just a minute is such good practice for that. We often talk about the elevator pitch in kind of a business setting, but I think that applies equally in government, and being able to kind of snatch those few moments of time with a senior decision maker to get your idea across is a really key skill within government.
Yeah, I found that to be true myself. You may have a scheduled meeting on the books, and that's one form of preparation, but being able to capture those moments in the hallway when you're walking from one meeting to another, in the cab ride to or from a meeting, or in the literal elevator, it's really useful to be able to have those concise options available to your senior principal. I'll turn it over to Will now, who's going to have us engage a bit more with our audience. Will, what are we hearing from our audience?
Sure. So I think that it's great to see a very diverse range of people from all over the world joining in and commenting. And please, this comment chat, by the way, will be open the entire time. So if there's interesting things, we'll continue to look and engage. But we have people from London, Kansas, Jamaica, Richmond, Virginia, all over, a great mix as well of coming from the private sector, the corporate world, as well as government. And I think that just goes to show that these issues that we're talking about, it's cross-cutting. It affects everyone around the world and people in our country across all these different sectors. So it's great to see that reflected in the comments.
All right. And it looks like our second poll is live. Will, you want to talk us through our next poll?
Absolutely, Kate. So the next poll, while the judges are continuing to submit the rankings, we're going to turn to the final category, which is technology and national security. Here's another related poll for the audience. And again, you can go on to cnas.org/live to take part in this poll. For the next poll, we're posing the question, what is going to be the biggest game changer in tech for national security? Again, what is going to be the biggest game changer in tech for national security? And we've got the following options. ChatGPT, number 1. Number 2, facial recognition. Number 3, autonomous weapons. And number 4 is other. If you do select number 4, input what you think that is in the chat, and we can highlight those later. Again, to vote in this poll, go to cnas.org/live.
Well, this is a great question to pose to our audience. I know certainly in the national security community, we think a lot about autonomous weapons, but in my other hat as a Georgetown grad school professor, I think a lot about ChatGPT, or even thinking about that in the research community. What's your take on the most pressing tech game changer for national security?
Well, I think that this is one that's certainly getting a lot of attention. And, just recently from the center, a wonderful piece from Paul Share in Foreign Affairs on exactly this topic, the perilous coming age of autonomous warfare. And this is one that has really rippled across the media landscape in terms of it's produced a lot of inquiries and questions. Paul is conducting interviews all around the world on this topic because it's so prescient. So for me, I think that when I think about that article, certainly reading it, it presented a lot of topics to think about, give you pause, and also, frankly, raise concerns. So I think that this is one of those topics that's evolving very, very quickly. And if there's a great starting place to dive into it, I would certainly recommend that Foreign Affairs article from Paul it's raised a lot of interesting questions and insights that are coming through. How about Kate, for you? What would you say, Kate?
Yeah, I think on the autonomous weapons side, and also just on the ability for decision makers and unit level commanders to receive information at such a fast rate now. For me, what it highlights isn't necessarily what technology needs to change, but how we need to adapt our human capital in order to use that technology. We're fortunate enough here to have a couple of our expert judges who focus on technology and national security. So let's bring them back. Bill, you're part of our technology and national security program here at CNAS. You focus a lot on AI, on biotech, on a number of ranging issues. What do you see as the biggest game changer in national security?
Sure. I mean, I think that among the options that were given, I would go for autonomous weapons. But I think if we think about AI more generally, it's a super diverse set of capabilities. And if we want to talk currently, I actually think there's still a lot of runway for AI to really be transformative across a whole range of capabilities, beside the sort of large language model kind of focus that we've seen in recent months. So to reference Paul Charret again, one thing he likes to say is that a big modern military like the United States is kind of similar on the back end to a big multinational company's logistics, like a Walmart or what have you. It's just that the effects at the end are very different. And from that perspective, a lot of the sort of logistics applications of AI, predictive maintenance, these sorts of things are already proving to be transformative and could continue to really have huge impacts. I'd also say that, in as far as we're going to see these kind of large language models have an effect, it might be first in enhanced cyber capabilities or cyber defenses. So those are what I see as kind of the near term game changers related to AI. But I think long term, it's anybody's guess. And obviously there's quite a lot going for autonomous weapons.
For sure. We also have the privilege of having Andrew Metrick on our team, who focuses on technology and national security through a slightly different lens, looking specifically at weapon systems. So Metrick, what do you think, what technology has the greatest game-changing potential for U.S. national security?
Thanks, Kate. I'm going to sort of crib a bit on what Bill said, because I think we spend a lot of time here in DC and elsewhere casting about trying to figure out what's going to be the next revolution in military affairs. We're sort of always caught in this hype cycle of thinking about the next thing. What's that next one technology? And looking back over things that have had transformative effects on warfare in history, it's very rarely is it one thing. It's really a combination of things synthetically together that when you put them together, have a exponential effect. It's not a 2 + 2 = 4. It's a 2 + 2 = 100 type of effect. And in that, you can really think about the synthesis of things such as proliferation of space capabilities, edge computing, AI, next generation networking that really drives up data ubiquity, that drives up intelligence ubiquity. It creates a world in which things are more transparent. So capabilities that either greater enable that transparency or capabilities that allow you to still remain covert in this increasingly transparent world are the things that I think are going to have the greatest effect. So that's not a neat answer. It's not a single widget, but it's really about understanding that warfare and all the pieces around it are a systems level effect. And so what's that systems level synthesis of things that's really going to get to a transformative effect going forward?
Thank you. Will, do we have our poll results in? What does our audience think about this?
Yeah, I was very, very curious to look at those results as well. We do have the initial results in, as well as some comments are coming in. And again, feel free to continue to enter those on cnas.org/live. Log in to issue your comments, but we'd love to be highlighting these. So in terms of the group, we've got the group overwhelmingly is putting autonomous weapons as the number one topic, followed by facial recognition, chat GPT, and other at 8%. So 50% to autonomous weapons, a pretty decisive consensus there that's coming in. And then in terms of the comments that we're receiving, it's just about how much these weapon systems can change modern warfare, the need to potentially send surrogates in defense of regular people to counterbalance these new weapon systems. So there's a lot of national security considerations to think about with these, and appreciate everyone that's writing in with their thoughts.
Yeah, it's really great to have such an engaged audience with us here today, in addition to the fabulous pitches that we're hearing from our contestants. With that, we're ready to head into heat number 3, which is focused on technology and national security. A reminder once again that to our audience that any views expressed by any of our contestants are theirs alone, and do not reflect the position of their organization or of CNAS. So with that, please welcome Jillian Elizabeth. Jillian's pitch is Final Frontier, the Journey of the U.S. Space Station. We'll turn it over to Will for a tech check.
Great, Jillian. We can see you clearly. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. We can hear you. Your time starts now.
Thank you. It may sound like sci-fi when I say this, but space is the last warfighting environment, and it is critical to how the U.S. military fights. Imagine in one instant losing GPS, storm monitoring, TV and internet, your ability to communicate with your loved ones, our military's ability to respond to threats, intelligence, mobilization, resources, all gone in an instant. That is the unseen impact of our assets in space. So why are we not doing everything to protect them? The US hasn't had a space station, an independent space station, in orbit since the 70s. I propose we change that. We need to launch a NASA-led space station in order to protect our national security and provide competitiveness. We need to do this for 3 reasons. 1, we are already behind our adversaries. The US has allowed China to become the only nation with an independent space station in orbit. And the Tiangong station has made strides in research and technological developments, with plans to launch a CCP-owned lunar structure in the next decade. We can't be serious about competitiveness if we're not doing everything we can to be on the cutting edge of this emerging warfighting environment. 2, a US space station would provide a plethora of national security applications, from in-space data processing, which would assist in intelligence operations, to weapons development, to assisting in complex ADR missions that would ensure our satellites remain safely in orbit. 3, with a US space station, we can set the standards for behaviors and norms in space. The legalities of what nations can and can't get away with in space are complex and evolving. But without a strong US presence, we risk ceding strategic advantage to our adversaries or private enterprises. Do we want the CCP to take the lead? Do we want private entities to be able to decide which resources they can and cannot extract from celestial bodies? The International Space Station is set to retire by 2030. We need to think carefully about what we do next, because in order to dominate this domain, we have to be in it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jillian. Next up, we have Ben Guggenheim. His pitch is Forging Convergence, how international development finance can build U.S. critical minerals supply chain resilience. Over to Will for a tech check.
Great, Ben. We can see you clearly. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Great. We can hear you. Your time starts now.
The 21st century will be shaped by competition over critical minerals and the technologies they enable, including semiconductors that advance artificial intelligence, batteries that power the energy transition, and fighter jets that safeguard American interests worldwide. Critical minerals are essential to American national and economic security. Through securing critical minerals for our supply chains, we also have the opportunity to bolster American soft power. Because domestic mining is limited, the US will need to invest in its trade partners and allies. And by aligning minerals investments with sustainable development goals in emerging markets and developing economies, the US can improve the livelihoods of those residing in mining communities and support broader social and economic stability. The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, or DFC, can play a leading role in this effort. DFC was founded in 2018 with a mandate to both advance international development and further American foreign policy interests. It provides financing and technical assistance to de-risk projects and mobilize private capital into the world's poorest countries. But while it has recognized critical minerals as an investment priority, currently mining constitutes just 1% of projects, worth less than $1 billion of financing. Through DFC's reauthorization process in 2025, the US can enhance its ability to address this national security imperative. First, Congress can expand DFC's available financing to accommodate the capital-intensive nature of mining. And crucially, this can be achieved under the agency's existing budget. Right now, Congress requires DFC to report equity investments as grants, but if it adopted industry standard accounting and recognized future revenues from these investments, DFC could reduce its account liabilities and accelerate its investment in additional projects. Second, the White House should establish DFC membership within the National Security Council. Not only will this benefit interagency collaboration to maximize security derived from investments, but it will enable DFC to provide a development perspective and ensure a holistic approach to national security. Now is the time to act. Our strategic adversaries, China and Russia, exert an outsized influence on critical mineral supply chains, and both countries have demonstrated a willingness to exploit resource dominance for geopolitical gain. By empowering the DFC, the US can mitigate the potential for future supply chain disruptions, and by focusing on sustainable development, it can promote security and prosperity both at home and abroad. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ben. Next up, we have Connor O'Brien. His pitch is the Chipmaker's Visa, a key ingredient to CHIPS Act success. Over to you, Will, for the tech check.
Thank you, Kate. Connor, we can see you clearly. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. We can hear you clearly. Your time begins now.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Commerce is set to spend over $50 billion subsidizing new chip factories and research centers across the country. We've come to a bipartisan conclusion that supply chain security means radically more chip production domestically. But success here is far from certain, and industrial policy is hard. So for this national effort to work, we're going to need more engineers, more scientists, and more technical talent. According to CSET, fabs funded directly by the CHIPS Act alone will increase semiconductor industry employment by 15%. But at the same time, the CHIPS Act is set to only increase our global share of chip production by about 2 percentage points. If our goal is to spur the creation of a world-leading, self-sustaining semiconductor industry, we're going to need a lot more skilled immigration. And we're also going to need to cut through the status quo immigration debate, which has long held that addressing problems in our skilled immigration system must mean solving the border crisis too. But we can't wait for a border solution to address chips. So we propose a 10-year, $10,000 per year chipmakers visa program available to firms in industries that the Commerce Department deems essential to the chips supply chain. So the chipmakers visa would be flexible for workers and incentivize high wages. Firms would bid for the right to use a visa on a worker, while workers can move freely between any firm in the chip supply chain, rather than leaving them stuck at a particular company. The flexibility allows firms to sponsor people to solve whatever bottlenecks they're facing, which always differ from one firm to another. One may need a software engineer, the other a rare, experienced faculty floor manager. So workers who earn at the 75th percentile or more in our proposal can sponsor themselves for a green card. No need to rely on employer sponsorship, no costly, lengthy labor market certifications, and importantly, no discrimination based on nationality. So while a typical Indian worker approved for an employment-based green card today will wait 130 years to get it, yes, they will die online, our proposal entirely avoids this problem. So rebuilding an American chips ecosystem will require subsidies, tax credits, and export controls, yes, but success ultimately rests on our ability to nurture and sustain the world's most productive chip-making companies. And that comes down to finding, hiring, and retaining the best and brightest wherever they're born. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Connor. Last up in this heat is Nick Romano. His pitch is a cyber PEPFAR initiative to secure critical infrastructure overseas. Turn it over to Will for our tech check.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. Nick, we can see you clearly. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. We can hear you. Your time starts now.
Great, thank you. Good morning. So the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief has arguably been one of the most successful American foreign policy initiatives in the 21st century and is widely credited with saving over 20 million lives across more than 50 countries. It has very powerful lessons that can be directly applied to the issue of cybersecurity in critical infrastructure throughout the Global South. Two of these lessons are the power of partnerships and also the necessity of investing in local capacity. So faced with the millions of lives that were impacted by AIDS at the onset of the epidemic, there was no way that the US government would have the capacity to respond by itself. So it needed to reach out to a range of partners from nonprofits to corporations in order to pool resources and expand the reach of the program. And one of the ways these partnerships succeeded was by investing in local capacity. Preventing and treating HIV is not a short-term mission. It can't just be a box that's checked off. And the same thing exists in cybersecurity. Hackers are persistent. They continue to adapt and innovate to find new ways to compromise networks where they're not supposed to be. So it's really important that any initiative that aims to raise the bar for cybersecurity overseas invest in this local capacity to provide your own cybersecurity local to your community. This investment program will have two key benefits. One is the hard power. By raising the baseline of cybersecurity throughout the Global South and in critical regions like Southeast Asia, U.S. forces and U.S. companies will feel more comfortable operating in these environments because when they go into these regions, they will have greater confidence that the infrastructure, the networks they're using are not compromised by malicious actors. And then there's a second, more soft power benefit where this can serve as an answer to the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative and Digital Silk Road initiatives to invest in critical infrastructure throughout the developing world, and then also use those investments as to compromise for future compromises as well. This can serve as a powerful antidote to that and a positive vision that the U.S. can use to promote its own leadership in the technological space. So by embracing these principles that made PEPFAR successful, the United States can really get after the scale that is international cybersecurity and promote a positive vision for technological leadership around the world. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to welcome back our expert judges this one last time, who will each ask one contestant one question. First up, we'll bring back Metric to pose his question to Jillian.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jillian. Thanks for an engaging presentation on an issue that's near and dear to my heart. So one sort of baseline question up front. Why NASA and why not Space Force if the focus of this is so much on ensuring U.S. security in space?
Of course, I think that's a valid question. I would say just because the infrastructure exists in NASA already, NASA is responsible for, I think the Space Operations Mission Directorate is responsible for the infrastructure that sends our astronauts into space for the International Space Station. I think it would be easier to go through NASA because there is already that pre-existing infrastructure rather than going through Space Force. Obviously, though, I do believe Space Force would be a critical component in providing national security in that last domain of last warfighting domain.
Great. Now it's time to bring back Bill, who will pose his question to Ben.
Thanks, Kate, and thank you, Ben, for a great presentation. Definitely, I think mineral vulnerability is really underrated, and adding the DFC to the NSC makes a lot of sense. My question is, if it's the case that the DFC only uses about 1% of its budget at the moment focused on minerals, but already has a mandate to work on that issue, do you think an expanded budget alone would help, or do you think that there are other challenges specific to working on mineral mining that that need focus?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that you're right, that there are other reforms that to the agency that can be made during the reauthorization process, and these are just the two biggest ones that I was able to address in my 2.5 minutes. But I think that an explicit mandate could be made to focus on critical minerals. I think also a lot of benefit would be derived through the collaboration with other agencies, further collaboration with the Department of Energy to make sure that we're focusing on all the critical minerals that we don't already have in our supply chains. I think also that so much of what limits current investment in critical minerals has to do with the private sector's kind of hesitancy to invest. And so by expanding DFC's ability to provide private equity, the most flexible, as opposed to debt financing for these companies, it will enable more kind of coordination between the private and public sector on these projects as well. So I think you're correct that there are lots more ways that we can ensure that critical minerals are a point of focus, but these are the two main ones I wanted to highlight.
All right, thank you, Ben. Time to bring back Kate to pose her question to Connor.
Thanks very much, Kate. And thanks, Connor, for a really interesting presentation. Particularly liked your ideas about decoupling the issues around getting the right people in for manufacturing chips from the broader border crisis. My question is really focused on, I can imagine some opposition to this idea from those who want to see those jobs primarily go to US citizens rather than bringing people in from outside. I guess part of that question is, how would you address some of that opposition? And also, would you see this as a long-term program, or this is about kind of boosting capacity now, whilst there is a longer-term program to train more American citizens to fulfill those roles?
Yeah, that's a good questions. So the first, I think the visa, as I'm proposing it, would be essentially auctioned off to employers, right? So they will bid for the right to use a visa or sponsor a person for a visa on whoever they choose. So that creates a source of revenue that can be used to train American workers for similar jobs as well. So in that sense, this can easily be designed in a way that's positive sum. Now, on your question on whether this should be temporary or permanent, in my proposal, we propose a 10-year kind of like talent blitz, right? Like all this money is going out the door right now. It's important that we get it done, that we get this right now. It will take years for domestic training programs for universities to adapt to increased demand for American-born chip-making talent. But there's, if we can spur the creation of this kind of self-sustaining, innovative, productive cluster, it'll create plenty of job opportunities for people both born in the United States and born elsewhere.
All right, and for our last judge's question of the day, to our final contestant, we'll bring back Anna to pose her question to Nick.
Thanks, Kate. Nick, thank you so much for your presentation. I was really excited to see you situate your idea in a historical example. I think bringing those comparisons is really helpful to create a vision and to help us better understand what your pitch is. My question for you is, how do you plan to incentivize governments who might be deeply skeptical about, the U.S. or greater U.S. involvement in their country, who want to bring in American companies, American officials to improve their cyber hygiene?
Yeah, so I think that's where, thank you for the question, by the way. I think that's where the partnership pillar really comes into play, because it's not just, I don't really think this should be something that's only led by the U.S. government or only led by even cyber forces in the military. I think that there's opportunities to meet customers where they are, and that could be through another partner government, that could be through a cybersecurity firm. There's cybersecurity is a big field and there's a lot of players. And so I think that leveraging partnership will let you put the right partner in the right position to to provide the service that's needed on the ground. And that'll look different based on the sector you're trying to secure. It'll look different in the country that you're operating in. But really, that's where I think partnerships are really key, is that if you get everyone on the same page, even if your organization is not the lead in a certain scenario, you're still able to have an impact via these partnerships.
All right. So thank you to all of our judges and all of our contestants who've been speaking with us across the course of today's event. Now I'd like to turn it over to Will to walk us through next steps of how our audience should engage next.
Great. Thank you, Kate. This is an exciting time of the event today. This is going to be our People's Choice Award voting. It's now open to the public. So the poll is going to be open for the next 10 minutes. And to vote in the poll, once again, go to cnas.org/live. You can take part in the voting. Again, this is a 10-minute period where this is going to be open to make your vote for the best submission. If you are on X, once again, you can also tweet regarding this using the hashtag CNAS2024. So once again, to go for the People's Choice voting, go to cnas.org/live. We look forward to.
Yeah, we want to see what is the audience's vote for the best speech. There's, it could be one of the winners of our heats, and it could be a fourth come from behind winner. So as we're taking this time to vote, and we want to give our audience some time with the poll, I think this is a great opportunity for Will and I to present some of the opportunities here at CNAS. So I'll cover some of the background of our next generation national security programming, and then would love to hear from Will a bit about the annual conference where our finalists will compete.
So if I could just interject just for a quick second, look forward to going through that with you. Just a point of clarity on the voting, the best domain for it is cnas.org/vote. cnas.org/vote. That will take you directly to the People's Choice voting. Just wanted to make that clear.
Yes, very important information. We want our audience to be able to vote. Okay, so to give a bit of a background of the next generation focused programming here at CNAS, of which we invite all of our contestants and our audience members to participate, a couple great opportunities for you to look out for. First of all is our Make Room initiative, which focuses on bringing folks to the table of the national security community who might be from outside of DC or might have a background and experience that differs from those who have just grown up in DC and worked across the national security field. Though we certainly welcome your participation as well. We have pretty regular programming and a newsletter that goes out. So you can check out Make Room at the CNAS website, sign up for that newsletter, and be kept in the loop on that information. For more mid-career national security professionals, we have our Sean Brimley Next Generation National Security Fellows program. We have a cohort each year that is selected from a really competitive group across the federal government, representation from those in uniform, those who work on the Hill, journalists, those who are working in DoD or the State Department. And so it's a great way to build a foundation of a cohort of about 20 members per year who meet with senior policymakers and have really interesting discussions and conversations about the pressing issues. Again, a reminder that our winner of the grand finale, our People's Choice winner, will be able to participate in one of those events. But if you are within the ages of 25 to 35, that's a program that you can apply to as well. I also want to highlight ways that you can come work with us. We have the Joseph S. Nye Jr. National Security Intern Program, and each of our programs hires an intern on about a 6-month basis. So keep your eye out for opportunities to work with our team if you're a rising academic or a rising national security policy person who would like to get some on-the-ground experience. And of course, you can come work with us. So it's always worth taking a look at the employment opportunities and the career page on the CNAS website to see which programs are hiring. We have a lot of folks who launch into government or go on to really great opportunities. And so we're always keeping our eye out for good talent. So those are a few ways that you all can be engaged with us. Of course, the upcoming way to be engaged with us is at our annual conference here in June. So I'll turn it over to Will to give us a bit more of a background of what people can expect for our annual conference here in June.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. Yes, the annual conference is the marquee annual event that we host each year. This year, it's a very special year given that the theme for the conference and also for the year at CNAS is high stakes. So it's really looking at the most high stakes issues that are taking place and affecting national security. So this will be a great day-long event on June 6th. It's something that you can actually pre-register to on the CNAS website, and we encourage everybody to. It will be a virtual event, so people from all around the world are able to tune in live to all the sessions. And the other thing that I would just highlight is as we move closer to that, we will have more information to share, the full agenda and so forth. And just to kind of tie back, one of the great things that connects what we're doing now to the June conference is, of course, that what Kate mentioned, that the winners from this first round will have an opportunity to come in and to compete at for the grand finale there. So this is going to be something where we have on June 6th, we're going to have the 3 heat winners, and the People's Choice winner will advance to the grand finale. It will be held during the annual conference on June 6th. The first round winners who reside in the continental United States will also have the opportunity to travel directly to DC and stay paid for by CNAS. So it's a great way to also engage directly in person. So once again, we're looking forward to carrying forward and seeing what the results are today of our judging and also of the People's Choice Award voting that's taking place. But we're very much looking forward to that grand finale at the annual conference on June 6th.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be great to have our contestants here live and in person, those finalists. I encourage every one of our audience members to drop some words of encouragement to our contestants in the chat function. And, as we're thinking through the grand finale here of the unveiling of our winners, I think it's worth highlighting just how competitive a process the pitch has been this year. We received multiple applications from and pitches from individuals across the country who were interested in pitching those ideas in one of our 3 main categories. And we had to winnow it down. It was a really hard choice and a highly selective process to get to the 12 candidates that we heard from today. So it sounds like we are getting close to those final poll results. We encourage you to get those votes in as we count down. I'm not sure if we have another just a kind of audience engagement poll ready to go, looking at where folks are thinking about working in national security. And if we don't have a poll up, I encourage you to put that in the chat. So thinking about, national security is a broad category. We've got folks who want to work at DoD, those who want to work in the State Department, folks who want to work in the intelligence community or at the CIA. And there's plenty of other government agencies that connect with the national security apparatus that we might not even necessarily think about as traditional national security agencies, like the Justice Department, the Department of Homeland Security. So we'll get that poll up in the chat function there at cnas.org/events. And the People's Choice is now closed. So if you want to put in your poll vote for where you'd like to work in national security, we welcome that feedback. And we're tallying up all of the votes here. Will, what are some of the tactics that really stood out to you today from our successful pitchers?
Well, I think it was great to go through the full range and to go through such a diversity as well of ideas and topics. I think just going back to the whole idea of presentation tips, some of the things that I saw was, where you can create a small bundle of the key points that you want to make and enumerate them. So I'm going to talk about 3 points, number 1, number 2, number 3. And there is some magic in the number 3 when you're doing this, where people automatically process the information better when you can keep it to 3 points. So I heard some of that. And also, I think in general, using opportunities to flag and underscore the most important point in your presentation, I think is also a way to make things stand out to the audience. So I was very impressed by the contestants that came forward and presented. And again, looking forward to seeing how the judging and the voting turns out on this today. Kate, what about you? What stood out for you?
Yeah, I think that was a really useful tactic. I also think we had some real passion behind these ideas, and that was it really drove home the need for these topics that might come across as a niche topic, but it made it truly relevant to the audience. It seems as though we've got our final tallies for each of the heats, as well as for people's choice. So we're convening behind the scenes, getting our judges ready to announce our winners and pulling over our winners into our green room here so that we can make those announcements. So our comms team behind the scene, let us know when we are ready to hand it over to our judges to make those announcements. Again, we encourage everyone to check out the CNAS website to check in on the number of opportunities that we raised today. Certainly looking at the annual conference webpage and signing up there for alerts that will enable you to see when our speakers are coming in. Will, I know we've got a really exciting lineup headed our way on that point as we firm up schedules. What are some of the topics for the annual conference that you're looking forward to?
Well, I think that there's so many that are great and to iron out. I'm very excited as well, Kate, to hear more about your upcoming report that's looking into draft mobilization. And it's a topic that is so important. We know it from our history, but oftentimes we don't hear about it too much today. So that's actually something I'm very excited not only to hear at the annual conference, but also to read that report when it's out. And maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what's coming up with that.
Yeah, thank you so much for pointing that out. So thinking about what does it look like for us to both deter aggression overseas for large-scale combat operations and also be prepared for it, which is not a thing any of us want or are pushing for, but to really be able to rest not only on our defense industrial base for mobilization, but also to think about what human capital will be necessary and how we best use our human capital in conflict. We haven't used the draft in over 50 years, and we've really changed the professional landscape of military service. And we've really shifted to a talent management structure where we're pulling out the strengths of individuals to meet military requirements, thinking about how we might do that in a larger scale operation. I know one of our speakers earlier spoke about the individual ready reserve. That's something that we've given a look at as well. So I think it'll make for a fascinating conversation point in the future.
Absolutely. It's so interesting, Kate, how you pulled that together and the scenarios that you ran through, all of the back work that goes into it. And for me at the center, that's one of the most amazing things, is just getting a little bit of a behind the scenes viewpoint. I'm in communications, but we have all this incredible research that's taking place, and getting a chance to just glimpse at it, whether that's in our all staff meetings or in the gaming scenarios that the research teams are running through. It's just incredible. And it's so great to see. One of the things that I'm seeing in the comments are people really interested in going into Defense, State Department, CIA. But I think everybody that's listening here, it's just a reflection of how important this work is. And it's so great to see it done every day at the center. So
Yeah, that's right. I think it's really fascinating to see, we have the gaming lab here at CNAS run by our colleague Becca Wasser and our defense team, and the way that they partner with programs to include mine, looking at military personnel. Also recently with our energy and economic security team, certainly with our regional programs, looking at the Middle East, transatlantic security and Indo-Pacific security. So watch this space and keep your eyes out. Okay, so we are here at 12:15 and we are ready to announce our winners. So we've got some fun news to share. We're going to bring back Andrew Metrick to make the announcement for our Heat 1 winner and provide some feedback.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Will. So I'm excited to announce and wishing them a very strong set of congratulations. The winner of Heat 1 was Julian Graham for his excellent pitch on multilateral shipbuilding for the United States and building a Delian League for the 21st century. Congratulations, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the annual conference coming up here in a few weeks to compete against all of our other excellent submissions.
Thank you so
Always
much.
love to see that confetti.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present before the Center for New American Security. Anna Carlson actually told me about this idea, or at least about the pitch competition. So thank you to her for giving me the suggestion. And then thank you to my friends for encouraging me to apply and for everyone watching. And then also a shout out to all of the contestants. I really enjoyed the entire live stream. I mean, there's no better way to spend a morning than watching some really exciting new ideas being presented by some future leaders in national security.
Wonderful. All right, so now we're going to bring back Bill to announce our Heat 2 winner.
Great. Thanks, Kate. For Heat 2, I am delighted to announce that our winner is Matthew Howler for his idea on an ROTC-like organization for future cyber experts in the national security community. So I thought it was a really clear presentation. We all thought that it's very needed and a great way to strengthen our forces and our national security. So thanks, Matthew.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited, and I'm very much looking forward to meeting you all in person in June and continuing these conversations. And I think it's a really exciting group of people. So I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Congratulations.
All right, so let's bring back Kate to make the announcement on our final Heat winner, and we may have a twist.
Thanks very much, Kate. And yes, there is a bit of a twist this year. I understand this is the first time that there's been a tie in one of the heats. So it's a double congratulations to both Gillian and Connor for both of their ideas. So Gillian's for an independent American space station, and Connor's for creating a pipeline of visas and a particular visa to ensure that there is enough people to run the chips industry here in the US. So really innovative, really different ideas from both of you, and really well thought through about how those might be able to be implemented. So congratulations to both of you. We look forward to meeting you in June in the conference. And yeah, this is a first, I think, in pitch history to
That's right.
2 winners of this heat.
First tie in pitch history.
Thank you, and congratulations, Connor, and thank you to my friends for supporting me through the process.
Yeah, thank you all for having us. This has been awesome. Look forward to meeting you, and happy to be part of a little bit of history here.
That's right. Last but certainly not least, this is where our audience participation came in handy. We're going to bring back Anna to announce our People's Choice Award winner.
Thanks, Kate. I am thrilled to pass on the torch to name the next People's Choice Award winner. And this year, the winner is Jennifer Lee.
Thank you so much to all my friends and family. I could not have done this without you. Thank you for listening to all my ideas and helping me sort of really make a clear pitch. Thank you.
Congrats.
Wonderful.
Congratulations. Yes.
Well, we really look forward to it. This is also a pitch first in 5 years of history. First time we've had 5 contestants. Sometimes in the past, we have had our People's Choice Award winner and one of our Heat winners be one and the same person, and we've had 3 finalists. So this year will be really exciting to see our 5 contestants in the grand finale. So we will see all of you come back and compete for the Best in Show at the grand finale of the 2024 National Security Conference this June. And as Will reminded us, it's worth checking out the CNAS website and specifically checking out the annual conference website. You can sign up there for updates and receive all the announcements of speakers as they're confirmed, and of course see our finalists compete in the grand finale. So we hope that you will tune in, and thank you for joining us today.